Okay, good evening and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, a special Motzi Shabbos edition of the Daily Double. Daily Double, play Jeopardy. It's worth $2,000 if you can figure out what I'm going to say tonight. Give you $2,000 if you could figure out what I would say about um, Kesher Muhsin. What is a Kesher Muhsin? You can figure it out right in the comments below. I'll give you $2,000. Don't have $2,000 to give you. All right, Beis Hamotzi. We're doing Paraches Mishnah's Beis and Gimel Masechah Shabbos. Beis Hamotzi Chevel. We're talking about the shears of carrying certain things out for Hotzah. Hotzah has to be transporting something from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah to be Chayim Midoraisa, and also has to be something of significant for, as we've defined, for most people. Hamotzi Chevel. You take out a rope. How big does the rope have to be? Kedei last as Ozem Lakup. It has to be big enough. Normally, a rope you use to tie things for jump rope, but ostensibly it could be used by a lot of people to make. If you have a basket, you want a handle for your basket. So if you can use for a handle for a basket, that is considered a use. Most people would use it for, and therefore you're chayav for that. A piece of rubber, right? Sometimes you have a sieve. If you know what a sieve is, you've sifted flour before. You don't rely on certain hashkachas. Here, even in Israel, the Frumis communities here, they sell sifted flour. They also sell unsifted flour, but sifted flour, so it's been pre-checked already. But some people will still do it nonetheless, and they'll sift. And you have these sieves. If you've seen it in the kitchen before, you see this one when they make challah. They have these it's like a basket with a warp and a weft on the bottom, and holes on the bottom, a weave-like pattern on the bottom, so that they can sift out the worms that are in the flour. So if you're missing a strand on the bottom, you can replace it with rubber. So even a little piece of rubber that is good enough to replace a small hole in the sieve that is missing, that is enough to be chayav you for Shabbos for carrying it outside. He says it's a piece of rubber used to make the size of a shoe for a katan. I think this basically means, on the bottom of shoes, they have rubber soles on the bottom. I think that's what it means over here. A shoe size, a rubber that can be used for not just to measure, for midas mina lekatan, a shoe for like a child, an infant child. When they start walking, if it could be used, that amount of rubber that would be used for a sole of a shoe. Niyar kedei lichtav alav kesher muchsin, a piece of paper, A4 paper. Kesher Mochsin is a tax collector. Kesher Mochsin is an approval of a tax collector. Maybe just a check mark. That's what I would say. If you're on Twitter these days and you want to pay $8 or $11 for your blue check mark, this has meaning to you. So if you write down a piece of paper, or that size of piece of paper, even if you didn't write a check mark on it, that's chayav, a small piece of paper, because it's valuable to write the check mark. Moti Kesher Mochsin chayav. The chiddush of this part of the Mishnah is that normally the tax collectors or anyone uses regular paper. Some people use cloth. Cloth is usually used for Sifrei Torah and things like that. So if you wrote a check mark on cloth, even though cloth without anything on it, you need a bigger shear. If it has a kesher muhsin in your chayav, we'll talk more about this in Yom Tzion, and contrast it with Mishnah Gimel. We'll see in a second. Niyar macha. Let's say you have. Doesn't mean paper that you erase something. Paper that's used. It's used. You have words on it. Sometimes you have a bottle of perfume or something like that, and they have dispensers. They have a piece on top that plugs open the hole, and you can press it down so you can spray some cologne or perfume on you. If that piece were to fall out, so you have a bottle with an opening on the top, you want to plug it up so the vapor doesn't get out. Otherwise, it's going to ruin the smell. So if you could take a piece of paper, the amount of paper you need to plug up a bottle of perfume or cologne, that's makes you chayav. That's a shear that's chayav for that, because that's a legitimate use that people would use it for. Gimel, or kidei lishmoa lasod kmiya, piece of leather to make even for an amulet. You want to write some incantations or superstitions on an amulet, a small amulet made out of leather, obviously, high standards. You have an amulet, you want to treat it right, give it the proper honor. So, Beis big enough to make an amulet or to cover an amulet, the words of an amulet, klaf, which is parchment, usually write Sifrei Torah, mezuzos on it. K'dei lichtov alav parsha ktana shebetefillin, to write the smallest parsha in tefillin. Tefillin is 4 parshios. Shehi Shema Yisrael. There's 4 parshios. The one with the least word is Shema Yisrael. The O k'dei lichtov shtei osios, ointment, which is what you use for a Sifrei Torah. It has to be the amount of ointment that's going to be used. Not ointment, ink. Ink that's going to be used to write 2 letters, because as we learned in Malacha of Kosev, it has to be 2 osios. Less than 2 osios is not considered writing. Chol, k'dei lichol ayin achas. If you have eyeshadow, it mentions interesting things. There's a lot of other items in the world. For some reason, the Mishnah mentions some things it doesn't mention. I'm still at a loss why certain things are mentioned. But eyeshadow as opposed to lipstick or opposed to mascara or something like that. So it's k'dei lichol ayin achas, the amount of eyeshadow you would need to put eyeshadow on one eye, not both eyes, because some people, if they go out with one eye with eyeshadow, if they want to look like they're punched in the face, hard to understand, right? That's the conclusion of tonight's share. Stay tuned for Ian Mitzion. The apparent question is, here it says, klaf, right? If it's parchment, it has to be pretty big to write Parsha Shema on it. Although in Mishnah Beis, it sounds like if it's klaf, this is what the Rishonim say. So even if you have a check mark on klaf, you're chayiv for that. How do we answer that question? Stay tuned. Ian Mitzion coming up next.